obviously, what do you have to do defensively to slow them down?
Yeah, I think, more than anything, when you face just a dynamic offensive team, like, you can't hurt yourself. Like, if you want to turn the ball over and you want to take bad shots, they're just going to get, in transition and get what they want, get to the free throw line, get rhythm threes, get dunks. And so you got to do a good job offensively of getting quality shots, taking care of the basketball, and setting your defense. I think that's probably first and foremost, because like no one's really going to hold them down, where they score 60 points. Like they're very, very talented and very skilled and great schemes. So you just have to make it very hard on them. If you're constantly playing in help, you're going to be in trouble. Like you have to be able to square the basketball up, stay consistent with your ball screen defense, understand what they're trying to do in terms of screens away from the basketball. But it's more complex than that. They run really good stuff, and they're very efficient. And Mark Sears is a great player, one of the best guards in the country. Wrightsell is one of the best shooters in the country. They have interchangeable pieces that really put you in binds, whether that's Stevenson, that's Reed, that's Grant Nelson. Obviously, we're very familiar with Cliff. He's great at the rim, great flip-up lob guy, super defensive player, good, shot blocker. I think a couple years ago he led the nation in dunks, so it speaks for itself. And I can go through like their whole roster. Like they have a team that comes off the bench. Like I said earlier, I think would be a top 25 team if they were a starter somewhere else.
So when you have a team that's that deep, how big of a challenge is that from a attrition perspective and things like that?
Yeah, you always talk about it, like you got to win certain matchups, but your bench has got to be better than their bench too. Mm-hmm. And so like where are you going to win your matchups at? Where are you going to get an advantage? And so they have depth, but you only play 5 at a time. So it's the guys that are out there have to be productive and have to be consistent. And then they're going to get some things, but you got to make them earn things. If they're just getting layups, dunks, free throws, and you're behind plays, and they're in the bonus quick, man, you're feeding right into their hand. But it's easier said than done. It's why they're the number 1 offense in the country last year. They have dynamic players, and they have a great scheme, great coach, and they know what they're doing.
How do you disrupt Sears? Or is he just a product of the overall team?
Yeah, well, last year as it got going in that game, he made such good reads, but then he made tough shots. He made step back threes. He made, and probably tough for a lot of people, not tough for him especially when he gets it going. You just got to make it hard. You got to try to keep him off his left hand, but he's one of those guys, if you get him the other way, he could make plays going the other way, and he can get back to his left hand still. So you have to be you have to be solid. You have to try to square the ball. You try to break rhythm, but it's a constant battle with those guys that are that skilled and that shifty. You just got to keep coming, and you got to be disciplined.
Those 2 Frontcourt guys you mentioned too, Nelson and Homer, a time when you guys are still figuring some things out in the Frontcourt. Just what's going to be essential there on Friday?
Well, Nelson puts you in a bind just because he's a good decision maker. He can use his dribble, he can use his size, he can make threes, he can drive it. So his versatility is going to be very important for us, just to try to keep him in front of us and not let him get angles off of action and not let him get things, off of breaking us down off the dribble. Cliff is just so good at the rim. Like if you've got your 5 coming over to help to snuff things out, you got to crack down with a guard. And then if you have a good decision maker, you got his lob or you got to spray out 3. So that's why it's so important to keep the ball in front of you. But, they both hurt you in different ways, but they're both very, very tough covers.
When you schedule like this, obviously you're not just trying to pile up wins. You're trying to get something else out of this schedule.
Right.
But what has it meant to you, this program, to win so consistently in these matchups?
Yeah, it's hard to get these type of matchups at home. And obviously we offset this with Marquette, so we'll flip it next year and go back to Alabama, and Marquette will come here. And that's what always happened for us. Not always, but most of the time, with the Big East Challenge, with the Gavitt games, and with the ACC Challenge. So we get 1 home and get 1 away, and then you get to your exempt tournament, and then you have your 1 neutral in Indianapolis. So you get those 6 games right there that would like set you. If you could go 4-2, or you could even be 3-3, and you can take care of the other ones, you're going to put yourself in a pretty good spot. We've been fortunate to win them all here the last 3 years. We've put ourselves in great spots. So the game, you learn a lot from every game, but you really learn a lot when you play elite people. And now it's like, hey, like, you know, everyone's going to have problems there. What are your problems and how do you fix it? I think you can kind of see some of ours. Like other night, like rebounding was an issue, for us. So like we didn't have guys that were physical, and then when they were physical, they, their feet were nailed to the ground and they weren't jumping to get rebounds. So like first and foremost for us, we got to take care of the basketball in a game like this, but we also got to rebound in a game like this. But they're doing the same thing that we're doing in terms of their schedule. Their schedule's actually tougher probably. They got an unbelievable schedule, and. But I think that's what sets you best. Like last year, people don't realize this, but they had 21 wins going into the NCAA tournament. You never would have thought that, but they just challenged themselves, and their league is so tough. The SEC's an unbelievable league, very, very talented, with a lot of great teams and coaches. And so like now, they're ready, right? And even though they give up 96 points in the first game, they score 109. And so it's kind of crazy, right? You give up 96 in the first game and you win by 13. But they get to the Final Four, and they could have won it all, but they had the same issue that we did. They ran up against a great team that was elite defensively.
Someone like Sears, is it maybe not more valuable, but is it tougher when you have different types of bodies to throw at someone like that?
No, it's more knowledge than anything. Do you have the physical ability to guard somebody like that, and do you have the knowledge and the experience to guard that? We're going to throw some young folks at them. And so like that's going to be important for them to understand. You have to be resilient and you have to be determined, but you also have to be disciplined and understand what the hell is going on, because they run different actions, they do different things. You got to stick to our rules. And a lot of times when you get off your rules, you get behind plays, and then it's tough to recover. But when you get against great players, you can actually do everything you're supposed to do, and you still end up failing. Well, that's when you tip the cap to the other people. You just keep doing those things. You keep sticking to that because you don't want to disconnect your defense. So I think that's the important piece for those guys is don't foul, be resilient, but stick to our rules and what we're doing and how we're guarding actions.
Touching on that, just how has Miles Colvin evolved as a defender from what he was start of last year to?
Yeah, he's gotten a lot better. But it wasn't something that we saw earlier, though. We didn't see it in the exhibition games. We didn't see it in the Creighton game. Our first game we played, it wasn't like we walked away and watched film and said, oh, man, he was really good. But in the last two games, you can say that. He actually, was getting upset about guys making tough shots when he didn't make a mistake. And then you try to really get to guys like that and say, don't worry about that. Like, you made it hard, you did your job, he made a tough one. Offense is better than defense there. Move to the next play. But it's still a good sign for us that he's making strides in that area. It's a good sign for him because he wasn't going to, get himself out of the rut being a one-way player. Like, he just wasn't. Like, he has, bigger goals than, being our 6th, 7th man and playing 15 minutes a game. Like, he has bigger goals than that. And that's what, we understand that too. But proof's in the pudding. You know what I mean? Like, go out there and don't turn the ball over. Be ready for your shots. Take your shots when they come. Rebound and guard. And now when you're a two-way player and whatever, and it's like, we actually subbed him in other night when they're doing that as a defensive sub. So that but give him credit, man. He's the one that's done it. And now cat's out of the bag. You know what I mean? Now it's it's not something that needs to come around every now and then. It needs to be consistent and do it every game.
When Shikari and Cox are on, or Cox are on Sears and he makes a tough shot, are they at the point in their careers where they understand that if you did everything right, you live with it?
Yeah, I think so. It's a lot's being thrown at them, right? And so just, you go back and watch film and it gets reiterated to them. When you watch film with them and say hey, this is good right here. Don't worry about this. Don't give angles. But when you're giving angles or people are beating you off the bounce and, we can't live in help. We have to do a better job of guarding the basketball and not being able to get angles. Your whole scheme can't be your help. Right. Your scheme has to be at some point that they don't get back by you and they're taking shots over you and out of rhythm.
Braden had 9 rebounds, I think. Is that, was your box house good? Is that why that happened? Or?
No, he's just always been a good rebounder. He just goes, he doesn't box out. And so like we get him, especially in rotations, we really try to talk to him about, you know, you got to be able to go and hit and box out, not necessarily his man, but like when a big has to go over to help and they shoot, like you got to be able to slide in there and hit those guys. But he's at his best when he rebounds downhill and those guys are getting good physical box outs and he comes in and cleans it up. It's ideal for us because if he can be that for us, which he's really done, you know, a good job of it, we got the ball in the hands of the person we want. So now we don't have to outlet it to him to start the break. He's got the basketball. And so like that really works for us. But we got to do a better job collectively as a team, you know, boxing out and rebounding. And when you get behind plays, like the box out's over, just go get the basketball. And we can't assume somebody else is getting it.
2 years ago, I guess the critique you had on Braden was he wasn't aggressive enough offensively shooting. CJ doesn't seem to have that problem. I know he doesn't have Zach, but is he kind of ahead of the curve there with just the aggressiveness to pull up in that mid-range and go to the basket?
Yeah. Well, Braden's a quintessential point guard and CJ isn't. You know, CJ's more of a scorer. So like we work with him on reads and talking about things and running a team, but we also are smart enough to tell him, play the game to shoot, because that's his strength. You know, like now he's better at shooting than making reads. But once they take away his shot, now it simplifies things for him and it makes it a lot easier. I always say when you think of it in reverse, you mess with your own instincts. When you think shot first, you keep your instincts clear.
What's your projection on Antoine West?
Oh, I love Antoine West. I think he's fabulous. You know, we're very fortunate to be able to get him. Very under-evaluated. He's a winner. He can make plays, he can make shots, he can handle the basketball, he can distribute, score, make pull-ups. Just a good all-around player. I don't know exactly what he is. I call him more of a lead guard than anything. He's probably more in the world of where CJ is a little bit in terms of that. Like you don't want to take that away from him. And that's something like with Carson Edwards. Like after a while, you're just like, just shoot it. Like just let it rip, you know, because that's who he is. I think he has more playmaking than Carson, but he still has that element to where, you know, he can make deep pull-ups. He can shoot off the move. Good player, just a good all-around player. I'm glad people didn't evaluate him. He didn't play AAU. Also, he just played his high school stuff, and he was hurt, and so he rested. So I appreciate that. But I don't know if things would have changed. Like, you know, he was here when we 2 years ago when we clinched for the Big Ten. And I think anytime you can get some recruits there and they see something special like that, and they've seen the consistency in our program, I think that helps. But no, I'm really excited.
Do you look for guards who have like some point guard experience like that, even if that's not the role maybe that you necessarily?
That helps. You know, like Dakota and Klein. Like Klein, his senior year, played a lot of point guard. He was never a point guard for us, but he could handle the basketball. You know, Dakota was, did play some point guard in high school pretty consistently. So having those guards that have brought the ball up, especially when people do different things, like they come 1-3-1, they come with some funky junk defense, they press you, they throw different presses at you. You need more ball handlers out there. You need more guys that can play the game, and those guys really help with that.
Trey is unique for a big man, that he's dangerous on the move, outside, inside. Just what does his versatility offer your offense?
Trey Kaufman?
Yeah.
Trey Kaufman. His ability to pass is what's really improved in my opinion. He needs to stay aggressive. He needs to understand his matchup, but he does a pretty good job of just scoring one-on-one. And I think you can't get away from that. Just get into the actions that we need to get them behind, and just play off of that. I think his versatility of taking an open shot or moving the basketball, playing in the low post, driving from the high post. He's pretty versatile in what he does, but he just has to take what they're going to give him. If they're going to take some things away, he's got to really help us by passing the basketball. If they're not, then he needs to be aggressive and score.
Just to jump on that, was that growth, do you think that was a product of him playing with Zach and having to find him down there and being crowded down there?
Yeah, that's the whole thing when you're a traditional power forward like Trey is, with somebody like Zach who's gonna takes so much attention down there, especially in his rolls and his dives and things like that. So we work on the spacing of posting up while we're diving and giving avenues for passes, whether those are pocket passes or lobs and things of that nature. But yeah, I think, just learning to play with them and learning to space, all those guys had to learn to space, and it even got to us to where at times it became a little bit of an Achilles to where we just played more skill. We just played guys that could shoot the basketball more, and so they didn't have more people to linger. And then when guys lingered and just kind of stayed in there, that's when we would get those stepping threes. And then people quickly realized, like, hey, you can't give them everything. And so then they'd take our threes away, and then we would overpower some people in our league. But then when we got to that last game, they were smart enough to do that. But I think Trey's done a good job of navigating his career of playing with an elite player, an elite post guy. It's fun. The reward's great because you win, but it's something you haven't been through. You got to learn, like you're not doing that in high school with somebody.